But first of all, thank you so much for taking time to chat with me. Really enjoyed the film.
Hey, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. So, Together is being marketed as this kind of like unorthodox date night movie. I mean, it has like all the elements there. It's funny, it's scary, it's a little romantic, but it's also a little messed up.
Mhm.
So if you were to like pair another movie with Together to make this like twisted date night double bill, what would you do?
Oh my gosh, I'm tempted to say something like possession, but that's probably that's probably too hardcore, like possession or audition, kind of like. But that's the far like extremes of this stuff. But I don't know, maybe something like you know what? I think it's kind of I would pair it with Scream 4. Scream 4
Okay.
to me is an incredibly fun night out of the movies, and it features one Alison Brie in an incredible movie death. So I think that's a good pairing.
Yeah, absolutely. And for an independent film, Together's gotten really big. I mean, you premiered at Sundance, you played at massive festivals around the world, you just got back from Comic-Con. Why do you think the audiences are connecting with this movie so much?
It is blowing my mind that it's connecting with audiences so much. I think perhaps because at the core of the film, it does come from a really sincere place. It comes from a really sincere place of my own kind of anxieties and failings and yearnings for my own kind of relationship that I have. But beyond that, it has really universal themes. I think even if it's sort of on a subtextual level, everybody has either been in or observed a relationship like this. And everybody, I think, kind of the fear of losing yourself in a forever monogamous relationship is just something that people can relate to. And then, from the kind of filmmakery point of view, trying to jam pack that story with as much like body horror, kind of crazy fun night out of the movie set pieces. I think that in a way, it's almost like a feel good horror movie. Like there's some real nasty stuff in there, but by the end, I think we have this crazy final image and we have this kind of upbeat, great song over the credits, and people walk out going, that was fun.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned body horror, and I think it's interesting that you mentioned that because that's a genre that's really resurged lately. Like it's something that it
Mm.
kind of like peaked early and then it kind of faded. Now it's coming back. Why do you think that, filmmakers and audiences are kind of rediscovering this genre?
Well, I think it's a real like evergreen subgenre of horror because in other genres of horror, you can always kind of you might be able to escape the creature that's kind of chasing you, or you can, potentially run away from Jason Voorhees. Historically, you probably wouldn't. But with body horror, the thing that is the horror is something kind of inside you that you can't escape. And to me, that's really scary as a massive hypochondriac. But also, I think that there is a universality to that as well, because more likely than not, we will reach an age where our bodies kind of betray us, where we start to sort of decompose while we're still alive and something stops working. So it's a great way to kind of work with kind of real fears allegorically, but I think it's a something that we kind of viscerally connect with.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that I think is really interesting about Together and its approach to body horror specifically is that, body horror is typically this very individualistic genre. It's based on
Mhm.
one person's like individual fears, but you turn it into something that's more communal. So how do you kind of like strike a balance between like the interiority of fear versus like the fact that it's this shared experience between two people?
Well, the way that when I was breaking out the script, I realized that I needed to kind of develop if you want to call it an infection, the kind of supernatural thing that is happening with this couple, rather than giving it to them both at once. I was like, if that happens, this movie is like just like silly, like that's like kind of unsustainable. But the idea that it begins with one member of the couple and then is kind of passed on to the other just really helps sort of break out the script, and also help from a perspective point of view that we're sort of more from the perspective of the person that's suffering with this infection, and that is a representation of their own insecurities because they are the more sort of the member of the couple that's most likely to be pulling away from it, and now suddenly they're forced to kind of dive into it in a way that is super confronting to how they feel internally. And then we kind of switch that at a certain point, and their dynamic kind of changes. And I think that's really fun because the characters never change, and well, the characters are still the characters, but their perspective and wants from the other do change, and we kind of get to see that contrast play out. Um, and then kind of once they're both infected, we're really sort of off to the races, and it just becomes this kind of I'm really proud of what to me feels like this sort of like wild roller coaster of a kind of a final section of this movie.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely very intense and it plays out in like that way. And something that I was really impressed with, because I've seen this twice now, and
Mhm.
something that I was really impressed with the second time is like in a way, it almost feels scripted, like almost like a comedy in the way of like setups and payoffs. And
Yeah,
kind of how you're like establishing things in the first act that come back later. So how do you kind of approach writing the script in this way?
well, my background is in comedy and kind of sketch and everything that I've written. I love doing that sort of like setup payoff, even when it's kind of reverse. Like I love how they do that in say Shaun of the Dead, where there's kind of punchlines before setups in that movie, and it's only on the second time that you rewatch it and you go like, hold on a minute, like this is only here for when you've seen it for the second time. Which isn't my coy marketing way of saying you have to buy two tickets and watch this twice. But honestly, when I sat down to write this, I thought like I'm gonna write Hereditary. I'm gonna write like the craziest kind of horror, most like dramatic, operatic thing. But as the premise was revealing itself more and more throughout the story, I just felt like why am I resisting this? Like the why am I resisting the fun of this? Why am I resisting that there is natural comedy in this? Even in just but like not just from the stuff that reveals itself from the absurdity of the premise, but also just from the reality of these characters' lives. Like Tim Dave's character is very similar to me, very like based on me and my flaws. And if I were in this situation, I wouldn't be good at it. I'd be quite bad at it. Yeah, if I were lost in the woods and I would be like, well, I'll get out my compass and then realize I don't know how to use a compass. I don't know what that means. Like, and to avoid that stuff, I thought would be kind of more inauthentic than actually just kind of embracing these two sort of like millennial characters dealing with just something incomprehensibly crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of pivot, Australian horror is like having this huge moment right now. Obviously, the Philippines blew up,
Mm.
Together is blowing up. So I really have two questions with this. Number one, what the hell is happening in Australia? I think you guys are thinking of this stuff. But number two, how exciting do you see it to have like this international spotlight for horror filmmakers from your country?
I mean, it's extremely exciting. I was thinking of the other day, and I hope this isn't kind of too inside of baseball, but the Philippines and I both were making YouTube content for a long time. We kind of come from this DIY scrappy, make films with your friends, and that's sort of how we got noticed by even Screen Australia, our government funding body. And there was an initiative that they ran called Skip Ahead, where Screen Australia reached out to people that were making stuff on YouTube that like looked good, and they said, "Hey, we like your stuff. Come spend a week, and we'll kind of." Teach you because more like what how to structure a screenplay and we'll get you to meet George Miller and that was so exciting and that kind of a thing. And the Philippines and I didn't go to film school and we were both part of this initiative, kind of taking notes on how do you structure a screenplay. And I think that the person from Screen Australia that discovered both of us for that thing is a guy named Mike Cowop, who went on to produce together with me. And the one of the screenwriters that was teaching us how to write screenplays is Sam Jennings, who's gone on to produce the Philippou Brothers films. So it was this kind of, it's not only Australian filming, it was like this 1 week of this one group of people have just like, I guess credit to Screen Australia, that initiative kind of really helped out. But it's so exciting to be representing Australian film kind of on the world stage. And I think really refreshing to have films that are connecting with an audience that are from Australia that are also maybe from kind of slightly outside of the traditional Australian pathway to making a film by not just doing the classic film school into kind of the system, but I'm really proud of that kind of DIY guerrilla filmmaking roots, and I see that in Danny and Michael's work so much as well.